Hello everybody, happy Monday. Let's get into it. I know we got a list of tools, listed drawing supplies, modeling supplies that you may or may not have, but you will probably get and you'll definitely need. So I'm going to go over those with you. I'm going to go fast and loose. I'm improvising here. Never done this before, so bear with me. We're gonna get weird. I'm gonna tell you all about what you're working with, what's in front of you, and how to use it. Some of my stuff might look kind of wonky, but it's because I've used it a lot. Yours will look like this soon enough. All right. I think first things first, when we're talking about drawing and technical drawing, the board's gonna be a big deal, the drafting board. It's a parallel ruled straight edge. It just slides up and down. Got a nice straight edge. And that serves a few purposes, which I'll show you. Got some guide wires on the back, which make the magic happen. You can adjust the tension of these wires to serve your purpose. It might not come in completely parallel right off the bat. So you might need to adjust it using this, which will tension the wire. If you have any questions, I can probably dive into that if it's not working for you. There are also these little guides here. And so between these guides, you'll be able to find your edge nice and straight. Mine's already in decent shape, which surprises me. These two tighten it down, which can be really helpful if you're working on the same line for a long time. Okay, now let's get into it. We have paper. Paper's good to draw on. I saw that you needed sketch paper. Most likely that's newsprint. That's a really kind of scrappy, cheap, quick and dirty paper. It's got a lot of tooth to it, but it's nice and simple. It's a perfect thing to start on. It's a perfect thing to sketch on. It's cheap. You can use a million sheets and not feel bad about it. I like it. It's got a mid-tone, which is kind of nice. A lot of people don't like it, but don't let them fool you. And then there's some other types of paper. I don't have exactly what was on your list. Here's a nicer one, Bristol board. Now you're gonna probably end up using this for model making too, which is kind of the magic of it. It's indispensable. It's a nice thick cardstock. It takes ink and pencil beautifully, as well as it can be cut and folded into many shapes and forms, and is a great modeling tool. Another thing is you guys have vellum, or should have vellum, but I do not. But the closest thing I have is a marker paper. The vellum is a sort of translucent paper, and it takes ink extremely well. It takes pencil down great, but absorbs ink very well. So it's great to go back over your drawings and ink them. This marker paper has supplanted vellum for me because it's also transparent to a degree, but it takes alcohol markers really well, which is something that you don't necessarily need, but I like. So I'm gonna start with newsprint because it's cheap and easy and it's small enough to fit on my board. So when we start out a drawing, we wanna just get it on the board. Since you've got a parallel rule, you basically back the paper up, right up against the straight edge. Again, bear with me because my stuff's a little wonky. But you get it straight. Another thing on your list is the drafting dots. Again, I don't have drafting dots, but all drafting dots they're made of masking tape and they're cut into little circles for your ease, and it's got a cool box. And they're lots of fun and they're magical. You use them all the time, but I do have masking tape. So I'm just gonna rip that up into 4 little pieces, one for each corner. It doesn't have to be perfect. Generally draw with some margins on your paper. I forgot to rip that one in 2 pieces. Generally draw with margins on your paper, so You can overlap your paper based on how thick your margins are. I don't really care for right now, but you'll end up measuring those things. Okay, so now we have a nice piece of paper, and I know that it's parallel. It's lined up parallel to this parallel rule. So when I move my parallel rule up and down the drafting board over the paper, I want to make sure that the tape doesn't stick up. You're going to be fighting that forever. I know that that's parallel all the way up and down, so I can draw perfectly straight lines horizontally. And now if I want to draw perfectly straight lines vertically, I can use a triangle. I saw that there was an adjustable triangle on the list, which I don't have, again. I have one at work. I don't use it very much, but they are awesome. What I use most of the time are these steel or aluminum. Both of these are aluminum triangles. One's a little bit bigger, one's a little bit smaller, just what I have on hand. This is a 45, 90. So that's necessary. But if you have the adjustable, this is kind of built into it. You can adjust it to whatever angle. And then a 30, 60, 90. And I use this way more than I use the 45, 90. And that's just preference, but it also has to do with how you set up your axonometric drawings and isometric drawings, which I hear are coming up. So I'm going to use the 30, 60, 90 because I'm comfortable with it and I use it all the time. Sorry about the audio. I'm just using my iPad. All right, so vertical lines are as easy as sliding the triangle along the straight edge. And you're basically, I don't know if you're right or left-handed, but you're going to use your offhand to guide this along the paper as you go. And you're going to be using your pencil along this as a guide. You can draw a vertical. Now this will be a 60-degree angle, and this will be a 30-degree angle. Now for the pencils. These are the lead holder. You have a kind of woodless lead. And I don't know exactly what brand you're getting hooked up with, but the brands are just preference, and they all do the same thing in my opinion. There are different hardnesses of lead, and that's the big difference, and that's the important thing. I have a few different kinds of lead here in various lead holdery capsules. They range on a scale, I don't know how high or low it goes, I think maybe up to 10, but it starts at 10H, which stands for, or maybe 8H, which stands for 8 hard. So the H is the hardest, so the higher the number H, the harder the lead is, which means it's going to leave less graphite on the paper. Now you sort of move up from H to B. The middle weight lead, being really versatile, is HB, which is right in between hard and soft. B is soft. I don't know why. There's probably a reason. But B is soft, or softer. 2B is a great versatile lead. It's also, well, this is HB, the classic Ticonderoga pencil. So there's a good reference point. If you're used to drawing with one of these, HB, this will do. But I've got a few different types of lead holders. This graphite, I don't know why we still call it lead. It's graphite, it's not lead. Comes in these little woodless shafts, and that's usually what's on the inside of a wood pencil. But instead of having a wood pencil that we have to throw out or sharpen in a traditional way, we just sharpen the graphite. So I have a few different kinds here. I don't know which kind you'll end up with. They all serve the same purpose and basically operate the same way. There's a little clicky on the end, and that allows the graphite to slide up and down. And I lost it. So basically you'll take it out of the package, a harder or a softer lead, whatever you like. You'll insert it into the lead holder. And now this little machine is effectively a pencil sharpener. It's called a lead pointer. Guess what it does? Points the lead. So it's got a little grinding wheel in there, and it will capture all the lead in there. It's very prone to coming out all over the place and getting graphite dust everywhere. So be careful, store it in a Ziploc bag. I already got it on my hands just by touching it. That's kind of the way it goes. Maybe a wet paper towel while you draw is a helpful thing, but I don't care about messy drawings too much. What you want to do, so there are these two little guides. One's for a more broad tip, which is good for sketching, and if you don't need to worry about a super fine line. And sometimes that's good for laying down thicker line weights. And then there's a thinner one, a really pointy one, and I tend to opt for that, especially when making construction lines. And I'll talk about what those are. Basically, you put the pencil in, you kind of want it to be longer than the hole, and there's a little hole in there, and that's what dictates how it registers in the sharpener to give you which one you want. So I want a sharp one. So I'm going to push it down until the lead holder can't go in any further. Now you take that, see it's a little blunt, and you stick it in here, and you got to be very gentle, and you're going to break a million of these until you get the hang of it, and it's just muscle memory, and I'm probably going to break it right now. If I do, whatever. But that means you go a little bit slowly, carefully. Slower is better. You're not in a hurry. Get into it. Drawing's fun. And you're just going to slowly grind away, and it's going to sharpen it like so, and it's going to be beautiful. I'm going to pull it out, and we're going to see, ooh, feel a little resistance. If you start to feel resistance, slow it down, stop it, because otherwise you're just going to snap this thing off and waste money. It's not a lot of money, but it's still money. You can use this for other things too if they break off, like in your compass or something. But now you can see, I blow it because I'm lazy, but there's a little felt doodad in there for you to precisely and carefully remove the graphite dust from the tip so it doesn't shake off when you draw and it's not messy. It's a nice way of cleaning the pointer to have a perfectly clean, nice line. And now that's not perfectly sharp because again this pointer is probably 8 years old, so bear with me. And now you're set up. Now you're good to go. I have another lead pointer that's already set up here with a nice hard weight, so I'm going to get into that. I'm going to use that one first. This one I know is a 4B, which is something I love to draw with. It's very soft, and I can also get light lines by drawing very lightly, and I can get very fat lines by drawing heavily. And there's a wide range with a soft lead. So once you get more control, a softer lead might suit you better. When you're first getting started, drawing construction lines, you don't want to put pressure. You want to, let's say, measure out your margins, go to the edge of the paper. You can mark out, let's say I want an inch margin, especially because I got tape there. Mark it out, and pulling the triangle back against the straight edge I draw my hand very lightly up. And these lines, these construction lines, they're gonna serve as the basis of how you draw. Drawing is a kind of construction in and of itself. And drawing these construction lines allows the drawing to, without getting too dark and fussed over with the pencil, allows you to accurately start to dimension and draw a drawing in which you can go back over the construction lines, which are basically just a sketch and a framework with the actual drawing lines. And we can get into that in probably much greater detail. I'm going to skip over a lot of the line weight and line quality stuff for now, just to get you through the tools. And if you have questions about techniques and stuff that are beyond what I'm going to show you here real quick, feel free to get at me. Okay. So you lay out a few construction lines. I'm just going to sketch something random here, like I usually do. Drawing out a few construction lines vertically, a few horizontally. Again, these are very light lines, and the hard lead will help a lot in drawing nice light lines. The architect's best friend, you guys probably all know what this is already. If not, it's a scale, and there are various scales marked at the bottom: 16th scale, 3/16 scale, 1 inch scale, 1/4 inch scale, 1 1/2, 3/8, and it goes around the horn, and it has all your different major drawing scales. And what that just represents is the measurement on this ruler equaling that multiple in space. So a good way to set up a drawing is to keep in mind and to work through what scale it should be at for the amount of detail, and you can use the scale to mark your points. I like to do that rather than use the triangle because it's kind of limited, and eventually you'll get quick at doing the fractions and the math in your head, but only by doing this process. And so you can mark your measurements, your tick marks, sort of at the bottom or at the top, whatever floats your boat. I like to go from the bottom up because it's the closest to me, and sort of push away. And now that I've marked out some measurements on here, I can kind of go back and add some light lines. Now, it's nice to have two of these. If not, you can just drop out the lead, put in a new one. It's handy to have two, so you don't have to do that process. You can just pick up a different lead weight. And then what you want to do, I don't know if we should do freehand first or using the straight edge. I think it's good to practice both. I think it's great to practice both. So maybe what you do is you start by doing a nice even line like we were practicing after you've done your warm-up, and try to apply a particular weight to the hand. And it'll feel good, and you'll get used to the lead on the paper. See what it's like to use a different weight. See what it's like to use different speeds. Follow those construction lines. It doesn't matter what you've drawn. You could try to draw something right off the bat in an orthographic view, like your floor plan or your section. That's a good place to start. And see what it's like to really add some weight and dig in. And it's good to do that until the pencil breaks, to know how much it takes for the lead to break, and you'll find out. Like you can't draw a bunch without breaking lead. And you know, if you're breaking it, it obviously means it's too hard, but it's good to know what too hard is, and it's good to know how those line weights change. Now, because I have a nice soft lead, I can vary that width, the line width, the line quality. I can vary the line weight, which is the darkness of the line. And that gives me a lot of control. So I can go from a very dark line here to a very light line here. And then it's also good, it's what I was saying before, is it's good to practice with the straight edge too. So you line it up, guide the pencil. You're gonna hold it off of that line that you constructed, and then guide the pencil. A great tip is to twirl. Get used to twirling the lead holder as you draw, because as you twirl it, it's going to maintain a consistent sharpness over the pencil, and that's actually an important tool to have in your toolkit. So you don't always have to go back and sharpen every time when the pencil gets flat on one side just because you have it rigid in your hand. It'll wear away, and then you'll have like a chisel tip, which gives you a thin line in one direction and a fat line in the other, and that's not very good. You want them all to, you want the line width and line quality to be consistent. So you can mark out your vertical lines, you can mark out your horizontal lines, and with the parallel rule, you can just draw straight across, doing the same thing, guiding the pencil. I like to leave about that much so that it can be guided by either the triangle or the parallel rule. And that's it. I mean, for those of you who have drafted before, this is all probably really boring, but that's the gist. You'll have this. It's an eraser. It's good. You'll make mistakes. I like this one. I think this is the one you ordered. Happy times. Let's see. Trace. The best. This is indispensable. You can't buy too much. It's not sacred. It's not supposed to be. It's a tool for you to refine design. It's to refine your own design, whatever's on the paper. It's a tool to mark over and to make marks, whether that's to get the drawing just right and to sketch it over and over again until it's just right before you transfer it onto your nice expensive paper. I use it every single day, and not necessarily to draw building plans or anything, but essentially as a tool to iterate or to go through a design process. And so when I use it quickly, and the way I use it every day, is if I just have a composition here and I want to make an edit, I can use a skinny or a fat pen. I like this pen, the Pentel Sign pen. You might have just a Sharpie or something, but whatever floats your boat. You quickly lay that trace out, bring your hand over it, and then you can begin to, maybe change the proportions, change the design in a way that suits you, in a way that you can see it differently. Maybe there's a problem, maybe there's a conflict that you need to change. So this is a way, without committing to anything, of testing a design and saying, okay, is that better than that? Maybe, let me try it a different way, And so you can just move the trace over, try it another way. And it's a way for you to see and test an idea super quickly. If you draw your lines dark enough, you'll always be able to see them beneath it. Good light goes a long way. But that's how I use it. when you get started and you want to really dig into the weeds and really analyze something and work rigorously through an issue and be precise, trace is also helpful in that matter. So again, you make it bigger than your page. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to rip my masking tape or your drafting dots. Just get those out so you don't have to rip them. I make sure my paper is nice and flat. I start in one corner. I keep my hand, run it across the paper, make sure it's nice and flat, go to the opposing corner, make the paper taut so that I can see super transparently to what's underneath. And this will become your best friend as a design tool. And in this case, because it's traced, because you're probably using it to refine a design or make notes on something, I generally don't really break out the triangle too much unless you need it to execute some very accurate isometric or axonometric, meaning measured three-dimensional drawing, which is extremely helpful. And I can go through that with you too when you get into the axons. But here's a nice quick way to say, take any straight edge that you have on hand, whatever works for you. You'll be sitting at your studio desk and you'll just probably grab whatever's closest to you. It could be the triangle, it could be the small triangle, it could be an aluminum ruler, it could be your scale. I always use my scale, find one that feels nice in your hand, and I don't like this one. But you'll go over, you mark your lines, you snap your lines, just kind of the same way that you were doing before. But you can go over, pick your points. And this is a quick way to extremely accurately develop a drawing and think about it in layers. It might inform you of a new three-dimensional relationship and so on. Anyway, that's the technique. And that's the fun stuff. Try it with all different types of paper. Try it on the nice stuff. Even if it's really expensive, just use it and get used to how it feels to draw on nice paper. It feels better to draw on nice paper. Even though the cheap stuff is like, maybe you don't feel like it's so sacred. I think it's important to draw on nice paper and spend the money if you can. Make an extra sacrifice while you're in school to do that. It's easy for me to say now. I don't know what your situation is, but I promise it's worth drawing on really nice paper. And then get back to the cheap stuff whenever you want. All right. Let's talk about ink. I didn't use ink for a long time, but now it's all I use. I don't really even use my pencils anymore, when I'm sketching at least, and I miss them. It's nice getting back to it. But you presumably, I think I saw Microns, or Statler. You might just have a pack of 6 or something with various thicknesses. You might have a chisel tip, you might have a brush tip, and you're gonna find that those different thicknesses give you the equivalent of what your line weight would be with a pencil. So instead of pushing harder, you just pick up a different pen, and you treat it the same way. You have maybe a light, a medium, dark, and those pens are gonna serve different purposes. There are some that you pick up that are in every architecture office that you end up just putting in your pocket and going home with. The Razor Point, the Stylist, the Pentel Sign Pen are ones that I use every day. Not so much the Razor Point, the Stylist and the Sign Pen. This is a nice thin tip, felt tip, super precise lines, kind of equivalent to a pencil, but with nice ink. And you can practice with these the same way you would your pencil. Get used to different papers and how they bleed on different papers, how fast you have to move it across certain papers. The angle also helps to vary. If you hold a felt tip on an angle, you're going to get a thin line. If you hold it straight down, you're going to get a thicker line. So you can even vary the line weights with your felt tips. And that's what a micron is. That's what those Statler 6-packs are. I don't know what you got. I might have a set here. These are sepia tone. I don't have a black set, but these are Copics. It's all the same, fine liners. So play around. 0.1 or 0.05 or 0.01 are extremely thin. 0.1 is as low as I'll go. 0.3 is super versatile. 0.5 is getting fatter, and 0.7 is a nice fat, chunky, thin line. For all else, scribbling and scratching and sketching, and nice big gestural things on a paper this size, the Pentel Sign Pen is a kind of brush tip. It's a fatter nib. You can get all different kinds of line weights out of it, and it flows very well. It's very juicy. And I use this every single day without fail. I might make a nice, delicate set of lines that are more precise, and then go over that with a nice fat boundary so it pops the drawing right off the paper. I recommend that. Maybe we'll get into markers and pens a little bit more later down the line, but don't be afraid of a permanent mark. It actually helps build your confidence in drawing, and that's why I haven't gone back. Once I started inking everything, there's a permanence to it that builds your confidence in knowing that that's the line that you want, and that's a good practice to get into. Okay. In a pinch, this is the best pencil going. They're very cheap, they're everywhere. The eraser is great. Typical pencil sharpener works. So if you're out of lead, go with the Ticonderoga. That's the way to go. Okay. I think that's all I'm going to get into for drawing for now. I'll do the modeling stuff in a bit, and I'll get back to you. Okay. Thank you.